Minnow Films, a multi-award-winning production company renowned for making sensitive and thought-provoking documentaries, is making a new documentary series for a global premium streaming platform about the Ashley Madison data hack. As part of our research, we're looking to speak to people who were impacted by the hack, as well as people who have used or are currently using the Ashley Madison website. All initial conversations are confidential and would not involve any commitment to taking part in the series at this stage. For more information, please contact producer Zoe Hutton at zoe.hutton@minnowfilms.co.uk. zoe.hutton@minnowfilms.co.uk. Raw Truth podcasts may contain explicit, sensitive, and questionable content. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual podcaster and are not based on the advice of a licensed psychologist, therapist, or other medical professional. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Women's lives follow many paths, twists and turns, and choices never planned nor expected. In life, temptation, anger, depression, and loneliness can lead a good person to make a choice that they can't take back. When facing judgment and isolation, a person can feel very alone. In this podcast, you will hear stories from women who made the choice to cheat on their spouses or partners. Hear their stories. This is Raw Truth, stories of female infidelity. An anonymous and no judgment podcast created and hosted by me, Rebecca Adams. I was an unfaithful wife. You are not alone. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Raw Truth Stories of Female Infidelity. Today I'm going to have a little bit of a different episode for you. A while back, I had received an email from a gentleman who was the other man. He was dating a woman who was married, and he was still in the process of having this affair. And then he wrote his story, and then it changed. So he kept me updated. This is a story of female infidelity, but it's from the affair partner's point of view as being the other man. So we're going to share that today. And because of the content, I also will be sharing this episode on Let's Ponder with Rebecca Adams. And that will stream 1 week from today's original. So March 26th of 2023 on Let's Ponder with Rebecca Adams. Because I don't know, it just seems, it is definitely a taboo subject. And that is what the Let's Ponder episodes are about. But yet it's also about female infidelity. So let's go ahead and get started with the story today called My Affair with a Married Woman by Tony. My childhood was tough. I was raised in a family of 4 by a single mother in the third world country of Mexico. We migrated to the U.S. and grew up Americanized. My father had cheated on my mother many times, according to my mother, but I never witnessed it. I was too young to know. I was never the popular kid. I was always picked on because of my short height, always picked last for games, etc., and never really fit in with anyone, being shy and timid. I was not sexually active until I was about 17 years old and had my first sexual experience with my girlfriend, who at the time was 2 years younger than I was. I always dreamt one day I would be rich and important. I am not married or have a partner per se, but I did meet an awesome girl through social media. I belong to a popular local bike club, and a lot of people know me. We met through social media, and we started chatting at the beginning of 2022. Honestly, I didn't look forward to anything but just having a good time. She wanted to experience riding a motorcycle, and I invited her to one of my weekly Friday night rides. She accepted, and we met at a local restaurant bar to have a drink and chat before going to the clubhouse. She did state that she had a spouse, but that they were on bad terms and about to break things up. She had told me that they had agreed to an open relationship where each one could go out and have fun without questions asked, even if it meant going out with the opposite sex. Our initial affair lasted from July until the end of October of 2022. I would say I never was interested in married women at all, but she made it feel so normal from our conversations and how it was no big deal to go out with her. We had almost nothing in common, but our sexual desire was on point. We felt such an intimate connection through intimacy that made us return for more, and a one-night stand was no longer an option for us. She made me feel great. From the first night we met, we had a very awesome connection. I could tell she was very attracted to me and made me feel very good about myself. We danced. We made jokes as if we knew each other for years and had a very good first time out. I believe she mentioned to her husband that she would be out with some girlfriends. This is what she told me. She had already planned to stay the night with me and had made her husband aware that she would return in the morning so she wouldn't be caught driving drunk. I knew where she lived and worked, since often she had me drive her to and from work or home when possible. However, I never stepped into her home, nor would I unless she was definitely single. I think that was my limit. There was never any signs in the early stages of the affair that her husband was suspicious. She would often see me without problems and would stay overnight at my place. We'd hang out often, and it seemed as though she wasn't married. As I mentioned, we started chatting in the early part of 2022, began the affair in July, and it ended in October when she was caught. She always told me he never checked her cell phone and that all the evidence was there. It became obvious when her husband started noticing her spending too much time on her cell phone and away from home on frequent night outs with her girls. But that was just an excuse for her to get out of the house and spend time with me. She told me she fell asleep and he checked her phone and found everything, but she wasn't sure exactly how much he knew. She only knew he had found out about the affair and became very, very angry. She disabled her social media and sent me an apology through text for ending it in such a cold way, but that she would be in touch as soon as she could. I was never confronted by her husband, as he didn't know where I lived or worked or anything about my personal life. The only thing that concerned me is when she told me she needed to block me from all of her social media and messaging apps because she cared for my safety. Thinking back about when she got caught, I think I got a little too attached, and I did feel very much alone and disappointed, frustrated, and a bunch of other negative emotions because I felt I loved her. No one I personally know is aware of the affair. I only told a couple of random people who I knew online, but never met them in person and didn't live in my city or state. Why did I continue this affair with her? I guess I just wanted a little bit of adventure. I never thought or imagined this would endure as it has, and always have that thought in my mind that at any moment, any day, this could completely come to a halt or end without explanations or goodbyes. As of the date of this story, it has only been about 3 weeks since the discovery. She came back to me about a week and a half later after the discovery. She and I agreed to continue seeing each other, but much less frequently. I don't feel bad, honestly, since I don't know him, and I just ignore the issue because I have a very busy lifestyle and only see her once a week or so. I often wondered why she kept the affair ongoing if she loved him and would not leave him, but I could never find out why. I wasn't expecting her to leave him, but in my innermost self, I wanted to believe she would. But then reality hit me and I thought, this is crazy. This isn't me. I don't want to break up a family. I could deal with being a third party and have our limits, but ending a marriage and being the replacement, I don't think so. I'll stick with the adventure and enjoy loving this woman. If I'd have known I'd become attached, I would have just ended everything the first night and left it at the one-night stand, and nothing more. I have come to find some new feelings after all of this. She has started to talk about her husband more to the point. I feel bad for the guy because he doesn't deserve a cheating wife, and I just try to ignore it altogether. My advice to the listeners: do not get involved with a married woman unless you know that you'll always be the backup option for when she feels alone and in need of affection and intimacy that she cannot obtain with her husband. Be prepared for the emotional roller coaster. Question for the listeners: if you were in a similar situation, how did you end it? So at this point, the story initially ended, but then he came back with more information. Hi, I do wish to emphasize that I hope people don't judge me or other men in this similar experience based on what I have shared, being the third party in a marriage. However, I would like to share the following. I enjoy this woman's company, and she made me feel wanted, loved, desired, and it had been quite some time since I had felt this way. I am 40 and she is 27, so the age gap isn't too much in my opinion. I have been single for 5 years now, and my last serious relationship was almost 10 years ago. It ended due to infidelity on her part, and I was at the time the husband being cheated on. I'd like to say that we may all be different and have different morals and values, but setting aside our differences and loving someone isn't that bad. The best you can do is to love the person back regardless of who they are or what they are and what they mean to someone. I don't know if I'm explaining myself well, but it did hurt me when the affair ended upon his discovery through her cell phone. I did feel her absence, and I missed her. I knew I couldn't do anything because that would only make things worse for both, and I knew she would not leave him for me. I wouldn't feel right if she did. She's an amazing woman, and her way of showing me that she cared and loved me was amazing and unlike anyone before her. I knew that things would end eventually, and it did at the end of October, but I didn't expect it to be so soon. Yes, the affair ended, but it has restarted on different terms. I do enjoy her company, and I do love this woman. She's a person, a human being with a desire to be loved, and maybe she just wants to enjoy it without being judged and having a good time while she can. I do too. So he ended that part of the story there, but once again, he came back with a final addition to his story. Hi, it's me again. So here's the final part of my affair with a married woman. It is most definitely the end of it, considering we are both now no longer in contact with each other, and it will remain that way because after what happened, I must accept it. I knew this day would come. I just didn't know how we'd end up, but here it is. So this affair should have ended back in the beginning of November. However, we continued to talk and see each other. But it was different now because she had scheduling conflicts due to the fact that she had been caught cheating by her spouse when she was asleep. He checked her phone and decided to look into conversations. I'm guessing he started to notice her a little differently. Well, the affair should have been over, but we stayed in touch through a text app, letting each other know about our day and how we missed each other, and how we just needed to be a little more careful, and that she couldn't stay at my place anymore. The few times we saw each other after the initial discovery were only a set few hours, and then she had to go home before a certain time to avoid further suspicion from her husband. Anyway, I had it in the back of my mind that this day would come. Thankfully for us, we were able to have at least one last experience with each other, and even though the sex wasn't as frequent anymore due to her time constraints, we managed to assist a Daddy Yankee concert here where we live and had a great time. This night was a night to remember because her husband picked her up at the local mall. He literally parked behind me, and she told me he knew nothing of me except that I was a coworker dropping her off. I was nervous when she told me he would be the one to pick her up at the rendezvous point of the mall. I was under the impression she had left her car parked there, as it was usually the case when we saw each other. Anyway, she got out of my car. We obviously didn't kiss goodbye since my car was parked in front of her husband's, and I sped away as soon as she shut the passenger door. I didn't want her husband to see me, so I took a different route home so he couldn't catch up and see who she was with. At last, about 2 weeks later, and a few other meetups in between, she suddenly stopped texting me. I was more than okay with this considering the situation, and I thought the affair was drying up at this point, so I understood. I kept going about my life dating other girls in the meantime since this affair wasn't going anywhere but south. I decided to text her a final message stating to her that it was perhaps best to leave things be, and that we had a lot of fun and we needed to move on. I already felt it was over due to the affair discovery and how our plans just didn't come through as they used to. I didn't hear from her for the entire day, and I became a bit worried. Maybe she was upset with me, or she agreed and didn't want to admit it. That night, I finally received a response, and it was very unexpected. She was caught again, and this was the reason for her absence. This time, though, she stated it was over, and we could no longer be in any contact, and how I should be careful and take care of myself. This sounded almost like a threat because she confirmed that her husband was very angry about it. I decided not to respond further. She blocked me from the text app and deleted me off of social media as well. And this is how the affair ended. Cold, sudden, and now we are complete strangers. Life is funny sometimes. It was fun, and we had our moments. I do miss her a lot, but there is nothing else I can do except move on, and I hope she does too. This life was not for us, but it did allow me to discover things about myself I will never forget. I don't regret a single moment. I knew she wasn't mine, and she could never be mine. All things come to an end, and this is how our thing came to its end. She was a wonderful woman to be with, and if I was ever to come across her again in a different life, you bet I'll take my chances again. She was simply amazing. Well, I think a lot of women listening to this podcast can understand maybe what this person is explaining as far as you having an affair partner who is single and the stuff that goes through his mind and your reality, because we hear a lot of those stories from women. But I feel it is interesting to hear it from the affair partner's point of view when it comes to female infidelity. Thank you so much for sending in your story. I appreciate it. So at the beginning of this episode, you heard a little advertisement about Minnow Films. This is a legit situation that is going on, and they are looking to speak with people who have used the Ashley Madison website and or was involved in the security breach that took place. So if this is something you're interested in learning more about, definitely email Zoe. And I do have her information in the episode notes, so please feel free to reach out to her. She's great. I've been talking with her for some time as we've been talking about this project coming up. So I think it's going to be a really interesting documentary. On Raw Truth Stories of Female Infidelity, I share stories of women who have been unfaithful to their spouse or partner. I give them a safe space to be able to explain what happened and why they chose the direction of infidelity. But I also feel it is just as important to understand what the betrayed husband or partner faced when he uncovered the truth. A few months ago, for some reason, I felt like something was off. My little girl has a tendency to steal her mom's phone. Her mom works nights and her phone is her alarm clock. So anytime you put a phone down around my daughter, she steals it and goes and hides and tries to play with it. She does this constantly. She's 2. We had given each other our Facebook passwords when we first got together as a sign of trust. She would always check mine, which was fine. I had nothing to hide. But I never checked hers because I trusted her. However, that day, I decided to check, and I honestly expected to find 1 or 2 things. I ended up finding 396 screenshots worth of shit. I found out she had been lying to me. To hear exclusive stories of the men's discovery of female infidelity in their relationship, have early access to regular episodes ad-free, and more extras, subscribe to my Patreon by visiting my website, rawtruthstoriesofemale.infidelity.com. Subscription pledges start as low as only $4 a month. On Raw Truth Stories of Female Infidelity, I share stories of women who have been unfaithful to their spouse or partner. I give them a safe space to be able to explain what happened and why they chose the direction of infidelity. But I also feel it is just as important to understand what the betrayed husband or partner faced when he uncovered the truth. A few months ago, for some reason, I felt like something was off. My little girl has a tendency to steal her mom's phone. Her mom works nights and her phone is her alarm clock. So anytime you put a phone down around my daughter, she steals it and goes and hides and tries to play with it. She does this constantly. She's 2. We had given each other our Facebook passwords when we first got together as a sign of trust. She would always check mine, which was fine. I had nothing to hide. But I never checked hers because I trusted her. However, that day, I decided to check, and I honestly expected to find 1 or 2 things. I ended up finding 396 screenshots worth of shit. I found out she had been lying to me. To hear exclusive stories of the men's discovery of female infidelity in their relationship, have early access to regular episodes ad-free, and more extras, subscribe to my Patreon by visiting my website, rawtruthstoriesofemale.infidelity.com. Subscription pledges start as low as only $4 a month. You have been listening to Raw Truth Stories of Female Infidelity. Your support of Raw Truth podcasts is truly appreciated. When you visit the website rawtruthstoriesofemale.infidelity.com, you will find the story guides to help form your story, where you can subscribe to Patreon for exclusive episodes, and to vote for the podcast to be in the Hot 50 Countdown for Podcast Magazine. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to my other podcast, Let's Ponder with Rebecca Adams, where taboo topics are discussed. To submit your female infidelity story, share feedback, or have general questions about the show, please email rebecca.rawtruth@gmail.com.